following is a clip from our latest podcast with Majlis Law Center. The clip contains mentions of abuse and rape. Viewer discretion is advised.
Another question that we had is that what do you basically do when you are trapped in an abusive relationship? I know this might be a little controversial question to answer.
So just to clarify, are you asking me in a long-term abusive relationship, or are you saying that when there is a sudden bout of abusive behavior, what should somebody do? Because they're completely two different things that we're talking
Um,
about.
so I would actually like the answer to both of those questions. So I think could you just first clarify what one should do in a long-term abusive relationship and then go on to
Right.
the next part?
So, like I told you, we work with victims of rape and sexual abuse and domestic violence.
Right.
And of late, if you know, after the big incident that happened in India in 2012, where a girl was raped in a bus, and she subsequently died because there was a lot of violence on her. And after that, there was this whole spate of encouragement by different corporates and even people at home and around the place to say that women should carry pepper spray, women should carry knives, and women should carry objects to protect themselves.
Right.
And I was terrified with the idea because I work with victims of rape. I know the situations that happen. Firstly, it's a myth that rape happens by strangers in public spaces. When I say it's a myth, what I mean is that majority of cases of rape and sexual violence happen by known people and usually happens in homes. And when I say known people, they're actually very closely known to the victim. They're either family members, neighbors, friends, etc. So if the pepper spray, etc., was to be used in this rare instances of stranger rape, then I used to be terrified with the idea because one is that we don't know how to use these objects, and they actually can cause harm to the victim herself because if the accused can overpower her, then he can use the same object on her. I was actually did a lot of awareness with young people about how they should actually not carry anything. And if you are faced with a sudden abuse attack, then the best thing you can do is not do anything. And I know it may sound controversial and against all norms because we're constantly taught that we have to protect our virginity, we have to protect our honor, we have to fight back, and this is what we have been taught and this is what we believe. But I always equate it to a mugging incident or attack where we tell young boys that if you are mugged, please do not try to fight, please do not try to save your valuables, just let it go, because at that time that weapon or whatever they are using can be used to take your life, and your life is more important than anything else. I have always advocated that you're always protect your life first, and if it means not doing anything in an overpowering situation, then don't do anything, because whatever has to be done can be done later. But the fact that you attempting to do something or you attempting to attack the person or do something to that person will invariably and only uh, lead further violence on you, and could lead to a situation of where Nirbhaya was, where she finally died. And I do give this example because we have this horrific case of Delhi, but we also had a case in Bombay called the Shakti Mills case. And in that case, we handled that case, and in that case, the girl just kept speaking to the attackers. It was a case of gang rape in a mill in Bombay, and she was very young. But what she kept doing is speaking to the attacker, saying, "Please don't harm us." There was a boy with her, he was at knife point, and she kept saying, "Just be gentle, please do not harm us." And ironically, at the end of that whole gang rape incident, they actually walked her and this boy out of the mill onto the main road, because otherwise it would have been impossible for them to find the main road. It was so it was such a vast area. And I say that's the difference between life and death. And this young girl actually had attended a Majlis workshop in her college days, and had heard us speaking about how in a extremely attacking, abusive kind of situation, one should not what are the things that we can do. So that is primarily what I'm talking about, is that in a sudden attack situation where somebody is using weapons or somebody can overpower you. But then your second question was about, in a long-term abusive relationship, what can one do? Now, that is usually intimate partner violence. One must remember that there is a cycle of violence and there is an abusive pattern of violence. So abuser is not always violent. He's sometimes loving and sometimes violent. And that's why you call it trapped. Because there is a violent situation, then there is a love situation, there's a making up time, then there is another violent situation. And this is the cycle of violence.
Correct.
Women, this is my belief, that women live in abusive relationships really because they don't have an alternative. And when I say they don't have an alternative, it sometimes could be that there is really no support from their family. There is maybe no social support in that area, or there are no options in that area allowing her to leave this abusive relationship. And so in that case, what she does is make the most of her situation and accepts the violence and just lives with it.
Right.
So the onus is not on her as to what she can do in an abusive relationship. The question to ask is what the rest of us are doing wrong that is making women live in abusive relationships.
Okay. And I think there definitely has to be more focus on that part. But
I'm saying this actually because very young students work with me, they volunteer with us, and they keep talking about what the victim should do. So one of the things they always tell me is, "Ma'am, we should tell victims about what is domestic violence. Domestic violence is not only physical violence, it is this violence and that violence." So I always ask them, "You think she doesn't know?" And they say, "No, ma'am, she doesn't know. She is just accepting her violence and she doesn't know this is violence." So I always tell people that even a young, absolutely infant child knows what is violence and what is not. So it's not true that she does not know this is violence. What is true is that she doesn't really have an option. So she's doing what we all do in situations where we don't have an option, which is we just pretend it doesn't exist.
I mean, these are like very highly traumatic incidents. I think I had read about abuse where it had turned into such an abusive relationship which lasted for several years, and the parents weren't able to do much, or the friends weren't able to do much, and this person who was stuck in this relationship, she started facing PTSD, where she would get flashbacks or she would have sleep paralysis because of the amount of trauma that had basically built up over the years. I think that's really a really scary, terrifying prospect. And I think you are right that it is really, really necessary for us to educate ourselves as to how to protect or how to reach out to loved ones who we believe are in abusive relationships. And because if we can be strong support, we can be a strong support to those people, I'm pretty sure that they would be able to they will be able to at least like come out of those immediately violent situations and kind of basically just work on themselves and try to like get out of that traumatic situation and understand how it wasn't their fault. And it and I think we really we as like bystanders like play, and loved ones play a very important part in that, as you have mentioned. So
And I
wanted.
also want to give you a statistic of India, right? So
Mhm.
marriage is such a big focus in every woman's life, and the whole community kind of is always geared towards when you're going to get married. And
Mhm.
when we looked at death, domestic violence situations where women had died in their homes,
Yes.
we found that most of the women who had died had actually gone back to their parents' house a couple of times before, had informed the parents that they were going through this immense violence and domestic abuse, and the parents always sent them back. Why? Because girls are meant to be in their marital home, and you have to always adjust, you have to always try and make this work. And so each of these cases where women had burned themselves, where women had killed themselves, where women were killed by their in-laws or their husbands, incidentally, they had reached out for help. They had gone to their natal family and said, I don't want to go back. And yet, time and again, they would be sent back because nobody wants that married woman with her children back home. And that is why women are in abusive and trapped in abusive relationships. We need to put the focus where it is deserved and not put the onus. Like, you made a comment just now. You said her parents could not do anything. Why? Could not do anything? I mean, we are just, um, you know, um, uh, painting this pretty picture of parents and brothers and, close support groups who say we can't do anything. You ca the common refrain will be that log kya kahenge, yeah, or it's not acceptable, society doesn't accept this, and they use these as excuses to send women back. So when you say the parents could not do anything, the question to ask is why? The first thing you should be able to tell your loved one, your daughter, who you have raised as a baby and raised to this level, is do not take this violence for 1 minute longer. My house is open to you. I will take care of you. We will do this together. You come back right now. There is where lies the problem.
That's really eye opening. In fact, I would like to rephrase myself and say that it wasn't that the parents could not do anything, it's that they didn't do anything and they should have. I think this is a really important insight, and thank you for giving me that insight and pointing that out, because I think it's so deeply embedded in us, this narrative of not doing anything or we can't do anything and it's not our place to do anything. There is a person who is actively being harmed, and we have to reach out to them and we have to help in whatever way we can. And there it is correct that in their journey there is only so much we can do, but that so much can be a lot. It can mean life and death for several people. I think that is a really important insight that you have given us today, and I really thank you for that.
You can listen to the complete podcast with the link in description, available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more.